Carried. Excellent. Item 14, the hearings panel report to Council on the proposed earthquake-prone buildings, identification of priority routes. So, I mean, this is just about the identification of priority routes. And Glenn, you're going to speak to this one.
Thank you, Andrew. And we have Richard and Robert here. For just a few quick comments. Thanks to Tim Linney and Tori Pettin. Good to mix in with the community board members. Obviously, you don't always see the time, see them that often. This is about expediting both the identification and remediation of earthquake-prone buildings, of which there is a subset of priority buildings, which I'll come to in a minute. So 3.1 through to 3.7 really give you the rationale, beginning with the fact it's required of all TAs as of 1st July 2017 to do this. We're in a high risk zone, as you can see in 3.2. The subset of earthquake prone buildings is highlighted there in 3.3, so it's not only earthquake prone but rather priority earthquake prone buildings. The consents team have worked with other service teams and emergency service providers. Consultation was undertaken, and as far as that went, those submitters on heritage, they called for a balance between safety and heritage, so no one denied the critical nature of this work. They all said safety was a priority, but I did not sense that it had to be an either or, but both together. So safety was a paramount overriding theme, along with a reasonable approach to heritage buildings. You'll see in 3.5 is the priority routes map. It's up there. There's been one or two technical difficulties. You may have noticed with iPads that this map link clicks okay on laptops, but maybe not on other devices. Certain hospital, emergency and education buildings in 3.6 are automatically prioritised in the Act. They are located, but they may not be identified though on the priority routes map. And then the final approved priority routes map will be used by our building consents team to identify and manage high priority earthquake prone buildings, and for building owners to initiate and undertake the necessary seismic remediation works within the required time frame. So obviously Robert and Richard can speak to the technicalities on this, and it might perhaps if we go from here for any questions.
Yep, absolutely. So is there any comment that staff wanted to make? I mean, this has been through a hearings panel process. We've heard from the chair of the hearings panel. Is there any comment that staff wanted to make?
I think Councillor Livingston has summed it up really well.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Yanni.
Sorry. Just a question for clarity. Does this cover all our cycleways? The major ones that we've built, the MCRs?
I don't know if it covers all of the cycleways. No, I can't answer that.
Right, because I just thought when it came to us originally, that was one of the things that we'd raised is we're building all these new cycleways, which, you know, but it would be good to have protection in terms of priority routes along the cycleways. Did the panel consider that, or did?
I think what we tried to point out during that discussion, it's not about the cycleways, it's about the buildings. So if there happens to be a cycleway adjacent to a earthquake-prone building, the provision for in the legislation is impede emergency services and pedestrian traffic. So I think the circumstance you're talking about, I can't visualise where that would happen.
Right, I'll give you an example. Down Cumnor Terrace, down on near the tannery, the old Skiller as is, where is, probably earthquake prone. I mean, I don't know. It's as is, where is, derelict, vacant, terrible condition, cycleway going right by it, major cycleway going right by it.
Is there not a higher level question here though? If we look at paragraph 3.5, the proposed priority routes map identifies the routes considered to have sufficient vehicle or pedestrian traffic that are of strategic importance in terms of an emergency response. is it an automatic assumption that the cycleways would meet the criteria set out in paragraph 3.5? Because here we are, you know, with a question around a particular cycleway and the effect of a building on that cycleway. In terms of what we're here to discuss today, or what the hearings panel considered, is it a given that all of the major cycle routes or all of the cycleways meet the criteria in paragraph 3.5?
Just about, I think. I mean, to me, the circumstance is no different from someone on the footpath. We haven't identified every footpath. Footpath will have people on it. What we're identifying is areas of high intensity. So in terms of high intensity on a cycle route, the Act accepts that there will be people using the footpath or wherever the pedestrian traffic may be, for example, but it's not in every circumstance that we'll apply this legislation to that. It's the intensity of the use is what we've broadly looked at.
Yeah.
And the next activity is to reduce the time frame if that building is an unreinforced masonry building from 15 years to upgrade to 7.5 years to upgrade.
Yeah. So in terms of Yanni's question about this specific building and this specific transport route...
Can I just say, it's not about the specific building. I was asked to give an example. A general high-level principle, we're spending hundreds of millions of dollars building MCRs, and I would have thought strategically we should be protecting them through, you know, policies that we're developing or strategies that we're developing. We should see them as, you know, we've just had a big discussion about Lime and all the popularity and the potential. So it's fine, we can just come back to it another day. I don't want to hold the meeting up because of it, but I do think at a high level, protecting our MCRs in terms of usability, particularly in a disaster, when people will need to get home somehow, seems like a sensible thing.
Yeah, no,
you may have a lot of people using it.
I'm certainly not saying it's not a valid question, because it is something that you would expect would have been taken into account, but the question really is around the MCRs and whether they meet the whether all of the MCRs would automatically be seen to meet the criteria in paragraph 3.5.
The other thing I'd add is that this isn't a thing for the future, it's for here and now, because as time goes on, the buildings are being upgraded. We won't build more earthquake-prone buildings. So it's almost a retrospective designation to reduce time frame for upgrading for a specific type of building adjacent to a specific type of activity.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess what we're saying is, would that specific type of activity necessarily automatically include all of the MCRs?
I don't think it would.
Thank you.
Because if you look, sorry, if you just, I've managed to get the map up, but if you scroll into the map, what you see is the route that's protected is along Rutherford Street with people in the cars, but the high pedestrian area is covered in that pink, and the cycleway is just completely absent from it. So you just need to scroll a little bit out and see the
So you've got this here.
Could I make two observations?
Yeah, please
as the
do.
Chair? The first observation I would make is that there were no submissions on this from a prominent stakeholder group over cycling such as Spokes. No other submitters commented on cycleways. And secondly, I would have thought that by virtue of what we're doing, high pedestrian and vehicular thoroughfares, that cycleways are actually covered. I note also in a previous report, which has a schedule of speed, cyclists are invariably much quicker than pedestrians. So in terms of response, evasive action, do we as a council feel reasonably confident to sign this off? I do.
Thank you. Further questions? Aaron.
Just on that original map, not the blown up one, when you look at the whole city, there wasn't a direct line to build hospital, and it's in IL4 and the spinal unit. I just wondered why that wasn't one of the routes from town. So there's not a link between the two main hospitals?
Our discussion with the emergency services, they didn't feel that there are any buildings that would impede them to get there.
There's none on those entire routes now?
There may be one or two, but there's other alternative ways they can go.
Right, okay,
Yeah.
so they were happy with that.
Yeah.
Cool,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you. All right, so
Right.
Glenn, you're happy to move
Yes,
this?
happy to move.
Yep, and do we have a seconder? Jamie? Is there any debate? All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you.